Hello everybody and welcome back to the 2 Footer Tackle podcast, a special episode of the 2 Footer Tackle podcast. It is episode 15 and we will be joined by Jules and Joe from the Almost Blues Brothers in about half an hour's time. You could obviously, if you don't want to hear me ramble about Man City Liverpool for about 20 minutes, then you can just skip to that. But yes, that is why this episode is very special, and I assume you could gather that from the title. But obviously I'll let them introduce themselves when the time comes. But for those who don't know who Jules and Joe are, obviously there is 3 of them: Jules, Joe and Dan. Dan unfortunately couldn't join us, but they are making waves in the AFL podcasting scene. So if you're a Carlton supporter, give them a listen. They are very good at what they do. I'm sure they'll plug their own stuff when the time comes as well. But hope the week treated you well. It was a very intriguing weekend of football rather. And yes, before we start, I implore you all, I ask you all very kindly, very nicely, with all the empathy in the world, to subscribe on YouTube, hit the notification bell. Make sure you don't miss out on any episode, any clips as well, because there's clips coming out midweek for the podcast. And then obviously Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, give it a follow, 5-star rating, that good stuff. And then obviously at 2 Footer Tackle Podcast on Twitter, Instagram and TikTok as well. So there's more content coming from yours truly. And then obviously follow me on Twitter as well, at Ari Stamatakos or Ari_Y_Stammer. Follow me on Twitter. Why not? Give me some more followers. Yes, so I hope the week treated you well. I hope you all are doing well. But of course we are here to talk about the football, and we're here to really talk about one game and one game only. And that was Manchester City Liverpool. We will do a review on that. Obviously I want to do one more review. I want to review United season and give that a little bit of a preview. And then obviously I want to touch on one other thing that broke my heart midweek. But let's start with, who else are we going to start with? What else are we going to start with? The game over the weekend. And it was Manchester City 2 to Liverpool, and an idyllic day of football, an idyllic afternoon, which exposed how beautiful this game truly is. It was elegant, tenacious, aggressive, advanced, beautiful, shithouse. Like, it was everything under the sun, and absolutely loved my time watching that game. Obviously, I expressed my thoughts on Twitter about the game and about what was happening through it. We'll do a review. We'll obviously do an in-depth review of it right now, but brief early thoughts. It's going down to the wire. It's a sprint to the finish now, and 1 point, 2 clubs, 7 games. That's the equation. And Liverpool obviously have the goal difference. City have the point. It's gonna go down to the absolute wire, and I can't wait. I genuinely can't wait. It's gonna be so good. And speaking on the game, let's do an actual review of the game itself, because it was unbelievable. It was an unbelievable game of football, and I saw the lineups. Not surprised in the slightest about Liverpool's. Thought it was pretty standard. City's for the first 7 players, not a shock. That front 3, he started Gabriel Jesus and didn't start Riyad Mahrez or Jack Grealish. And I thought Mahrez was a lock to start personally, because I thought he's been playing out of his skin this season. But he went with Sterling, he went with Jesus, and he went with a front line that performed really well. It performed really well, and it created a lot of chances. Obviously, Foden was the other player in that front 3, and obviously pre-game I did my preview saying I think that they should play De Bruyne as a false 9. I'll eat my words on that. I think he played fantastically well in his role. I thought he was one of the better players on the pitch. And I thought Jesus held his own brilliantly in that role, or whether or not it was Sterling playing in that role, who knows. But obviously that front 3 is very fluid, right? with just remembering the game now, I do think it was Sterling, but obviously Sterling had a great chance early on, which probably should have scored, and then from then on, it's kind of seemed that... Okay, so we've spoken about the lineups. Let's speak about the game, because the game's kicked off, and my initial thoughts were, wow, Liverpool look sluggish, they look anxious, they look scared, they looked hesitant, and I was like, wow, that's not what I wanted to see from Liverpool, and that's not what I thought I'd say from Liverpool anyway, and they got stuck in positions where they shouldn't get stuck in. They got caught out in positions where they shouldn't get caught out in, and City really capitalised. Obviously, that massive Sterling chance at the start of the game, which was denied, and from then on, I thought that chance would kick Liverpool into gear and make them think, oh wow, all right, we're in a game here, like we're in the Premier League final essentially, all right, we got to go, but they just didn't look like they were switched on, and minutes later, Kevin De Bruyne scores from a free kick taken quickly, and it was a really bizarre opening 15 minutes or opening 10 minutes, because City looked completely in control, Liverpool looked out of it, and I thought this could be a drubbing here. This could be 2-3, 4-0 and really put the league to bed. But credit to Liverpool, they only need one chance, and they got their one chance, and they scored their one chance early on, and it was a masterful ball from Robertson to the back post, and it was very calmly played across by Trent, and Jota was there, and very, very Van Nistelrooy-esque from Diogo Jota, being in the right place at the right time, poking home the equaliser when his side potentially didn't deserve it. So it was frantic opening 15, which saw two goals, one very early on, and then the other one against the run of play, and Liverpool from then on kind of held their own. They really turned the game into a, not chess match per se, but a really methodical, systematic style game. They really controlled it and got the game back on their terms. Maybe not in terms of possession, but they limited City in what they could do, and as the game drew on, that slowly seeped out. As soon as they scored, Liverpool, they got the game under control, and then as the time ticked on, City got back into the game, and their second goal came from a masterful ball from, I'm pretty sure, João Cancelo, and Trent Alexander-Arnold caught out once again, and Jesus tiptoed to the back post and scored, and that was the avenue. I know that goal came from a corner, or from a free kick, but that side was targeted. That Matip and Trent side was targeted. They really went hell for leather down that side. Cancelo had a fantastic game, and Phil Foden as well really exploited Trent's positioning issues and Matip's pace. Foden played really well, and Cancelo had a really good game as well. So that was clearly the avenue that they targeted pre-game, and that was clearly the avenue that they went towards during the game, and they found success through it, because maybe not both goals, but there was a lot of City's attacks came from that left-hand side, and for all, Trent is fantastic at crossing the ball and an unbelievable playmaker. Defensively, there is still a question mark, a very faint question mark about his ability to... I'm yawning. It's 5 o'clock at night and I'm yawning. Well, all right. His ability to impact the game defensively. So they got away with it. I do think Matip didn't play one of his better games, and I also think Henderson as well didn't play one of his best games, which influenced that left-hand side for City, because Henderson normally helps Trent out, helps Matip out. They play as like a 3, and he didn't have a good game. I thought he had a lot of not nosebleed, but like a blood rushing to the head moments where he was going and wasn't really thinking. So I don't think Henderson played particularly well. Obviously Jota scored, and then from once Jesus scored, rather, I thought, in my opinion, Liverpool just had to get to halftime. If they could get to halftime 2-1 down, still be in the game, right? And they're like, all right, we can reset from here, and so that's what they did. And then 90 seconds after the halftime whistle, I mean the second half started, even Liverpool equalise, and beautiful finish from Sadio Mane. I think that was the first time Salah really had a real foothold in the game. He did well to create that goal, and from then on, it was game on, and it was almost as if, all right, who's going to take the game by the scruff of the neck? Because it kind of seemed that after that Mane goal, both systems had cancelled each other out in a way. Now it was down to who's going to take the game by the scruff of the neck, and Raheem Sterling had the chance. He scored. It was a really good finish, but it was flagged for offside, and whether or not it was offside, I mean, I've seen it once, I haven't seen it again, so when he scored, I thought could be off here. That's my initial reaction. Sorry, just putting the camera back in focus. There we go. My initial reaction when he scored was that looks offside. And then on the replay, it was touch and go, but it was ruled out. And I mean, you can't really do a lot about it now, but I think that kind of took the sting out of the game a little bit, because City thought that they had broken through again. They'd got the lead for a third time, and to have that ruled out is that soul-crushing, that heartbreaking moment of, oh, fuck, we've got to go again. And this Liverpool team were relentless. There was no give in that Liverpool team, and credit to them. They held on. They played really well, and obviously there was that Mahrez free kick that hit the post very late on, and I thought that was the moment. Like I said, I thought the game would be decided by a moment, and I thought that was it. But fair dues to Liverpool. They held on. City potentially should have won the game, and if you look at the stats, yeah, okay, City did deserve to win that game based on the stats and the chances and etc. But looking at it from a holistic perspective, I think a draw was a fair result. I can't believe I'm yawning and it's 5:10 in the afternoon. I'm tired. It's because I didn't sleep. I mean, this game did finish at like 3:30 and I woke up at like 9 o'clock. So, I mean, there's probably that. But yeah, I do think a draw, in the grand scheme of things, was the best result. And yeah, that's going to be a interesting game to look back on in 8 weeks' time, when it's down to a sprint. 7 games, 2 teams, 1 point, and I'm pumped for this month and a half, really, because it's going to show what both teams are made of, and I'm going to pull my neck out on the line. I think Liverpool are going to win the league. I think Liverpool love being the hunters. They love putting that pressure on. They love taking it to the limit, and they thrive in that role. I don't think City can hold on. I do think that the pressure will get to them and they'll bottle it. I don't think Pep. I think Pep will overthink one game, and that one game will come back to bite them. I don't see Liverpool dropping points at all for the rest of the season. I see City dropping points pretty soon, and it's going to be a tight finish. But that's my prediction. To pull my neck out on the line. I've said it now, so I can't take it back, can I? So yes, yeah, it's going to be one of those oh wow type things where it's going to be like, it's kind of hard to describe, because it's going to be a thing of it's cat and mouse. Who drops points? Do you drop points? Who drops points, and who is that team to bottle it? I don't think either team can necessarily bottle it, but who's going to be that team that chokes? And it's going to be very interesting to see. And I think, speaking on the game again, I think Ederson's moment of madness was bizarre, like really weird, and it almost seemed like he didn't care. Which was the weirdest part. It almost seemed that it was like, oh yeah, it's alright, I'll just pass the ball out on my goal line with a player up my ass. Like, that was weird, and I guess it showed that that was almost a microcosm of the whole match. You had Liverpool, who were that anxious, really like hesitant team. City was so calm throughout, so calm, just picking their way through Liverpool, passing it around, no problem, and that was a microcosm of the game. You had Ederson, who even when he looked panicked was calm as a cucumber, cool as a cucumber even. And when Alisson was even in under slight pressure, he seemed panicky. So I guess that was the story of the day, and one of those things which you can't you can't do anything about, but we'll look back on and think, fuck, if Jota was 3 seconds quicker, or if Jota's legs were like 10 centimeters taller or whatever, then he would have got there and poked home. But it is what it is now. Can't change it, can't fix it, can't do anything about it except talk about it and complain that it didn't happen the way we wanted it to happen. So I think that's it for that game review. Now I want to speak on another team who's had a pretty piss poor season. Manchester United, their season's done. Obviously a 1-0 loss to Everton, and I thought that Ralph would... so I want to speak about it, a couple of things. There's a lot of things got wrong with that club. It's going to take a monumental effort to fix it. Monumental, because the new coach who comes in is going to be that middleman between a mutiny in the squad and a mutiny at the board, and fans as an external factor. Sorry, I just didn't get the yawn out. Fans as the external factor who are unhappy with everything. So I thought Ralph would come in and steady the ship. I have to eat my own words on that. He's clearly proven that probably not the best manager, and he's probably proven that he can't manage the big teams. He's taken United and he's dropped a lot of points in games where he shouldn't have dropped points, and yeah, it is one of those things where it's like you can only look back and hindsight's a beautiful thing, right? But the next manager, whether it be Ten Hag, whether it be Poch, whether it be whoever, has a monumental job on their hands, because it's a so just putting the camera back in focus. Oh, I'm just shaking the camera all over the shop there. It's alright, we're back. It's going to be a monumental effort because there's so much wrong with that club systematically. It's a joke and it's a shambles. And who is it? I don't know. My pick would be Ten Hag, but I don't know. It's going to be tough. Ronaldo's probably going to leave. We'll touch on Ronaldo in a bit, but I think he's going to leave, and I think he's going to... That's going to be the point where it's like, oh, fuck, we're shit again, because we've had probably one of the greatest players to ever play the game come back to our club, and we've let him go because we can't qualify for Champions League with this ridiculously stacked team. And okay, I've just seen something. I'll touch on that a bit later, but I've just got a notification from David Ornstein who's tweeted something, so I'll touch on that once I finish his talking point. But it's gonna be one of those things where they're gonna lose Ronaldo. They're gonna realize the hole that they're in, and they're gonna be like, oh fuck, what are we gonna do now? And it's gonna be a tricky situation to get out of, because they lost to Everton in a way which they shouldn't have lost to Everton. They were really poor, really really poor, and let's look at their squad and let's see who should play next season, who should take the mantle. Their goalkeepers, De Gea and Henderson. I think Henderson should leave. I think he have much better opportunities elsewhere. I think David De Gea is past it as a number one. I think he can be a more than serviceable number two, but not a number one. Jones out. Varane you keep. Maguire as far away as humanly possible. Lindelof serviceable. Luke Shaw serviceable. Tellez, you probably ship him out. Bailly, you get him out. And either Dalot or Wan-Bissaka. And I think that goes to show with either Shaw or Tellez, or Wan-Bissaka. No, and Wan-Bissaka or Dalot have to leave. You can't keep both. One of them has to leave, and you have to bring in a starting replacement for the other one. Midfielders, Mata needs to go. Matic needs to go. Pogba will leave. Has to leave. He's a stain, in my opinion. And you need to move on, in my opinion. Lingard, you're not getting anything out of him. You're not playing him, so why not just let him go? Fred, let him go. Actually, no, sorry. Fred keep, serviceable. Obviously, Bruno keep. Scott McTominay keep. Forwards, Ronaldo, you get rid of. Oh, he'll leave. Cavani, you get rid of. Rashford, it's time for him to go. I don't think he can do anything more. It doesn't seem like he has a role in that team anymore, and there's just something's not clicking with him. So you get rid of him, in my opinion. Jadon Sancho, you keep. Anthony Elanga, you keep, and then Mejbri and Shirtire, I don't know who they are, but I'm assuming you keep them or you send them out on loan. Actually, no, I will. Mason Greenwood should be not ever play football again and should be in a jail cell and should not be released until I think he should be released. I think that's how it should work. I started over his name and I thought, should I mention him? I thought, fuck it. I've said it now. Yeah. We'll move on. So, that's what. They're my thoughts on United. Like I said, it's going to take a monumental effort to get them back to where they need to be, and it's going to be interesting to see whether the new manager can do it, because it is one of those things. Next talking point. I say next talking point because I just put this here very briefly. This man broke my heart. Karim Benzema. Now, he scored a fantastic hat-trick over the weekend. During the weekend. I'm going to say this now, fully confident, chest out. Karim Benzema is the best striker in the world. Karim Benzema is the best out-and-out number 9 in the world. He's better than Harry Kane. He's better than Lewandowski. He's better than Mbappe as a number 9. He is freakishly good. He scored 2 goals in midweek against Chelsea, which were out of this world good. Like, they're just sublime finishes, and there's no one else on the planet that can do what he does. Unbelievable. And we've seen now, ever since Ronaldo's left, he's been unbelievable, but it's only now that people are realising just how good he is. No player can do what he does. Best number 9 in the world, hands down, no doubt. It is unless someone comes in the next couple of months or in the next year and completely blows him out the water, I don't see this changing, because I think he'll keep going and going and going for seasons upon seasons. I think he's got a couple of seasons left in him, and he looks unbelievable. So yeah, I think they're my 2 cents on Karim Benzema and just how good he is. Yes, so that is this portion of the podcast done. 22 minutes of just me rambling. So I'm now going to pass over to future Ari and Jules and Joe and speak about whatever we're going to speak about with the Almost Blues brothers. And welcome to the first interlude of a guest on the 2 Footed Tackle podcast. I'm with 2/3 of the Almost Blues brothers, Joe and Jules. How are you, boys?
Good, mate. Yes, 2/3. Dan couldn't make it. He's a busy man. I don't know how we lock him down every week for our podcast. It's a miracle to even do that. But hey, how's this? You got 2/3 in terms of actual people, but I reckon in terms of quality, you got about 80%.
There we go.
Yeah, how's it going, Artie? Good? How's it been?
Good. Everything's all good. Now, for those who are unaware, just why are you so good at what you guys do? Give us a give us a rundown of what you blokes are.
Jules?
What do you reckon, Joe? I think it's just because of the personalities that we are, and I think we complement each other very well. Obviously, we've known each other since day dot, really, so it makes it quite easy for us to be able to obviously conversate about all things blue baggers and amongst that other things, really.
Jules obviously doesn't have a humble bone in his body. We're not that good. We're genuinely just 3 blokes that are just talking shit every Sunday. We release a podcast and people listen to it. That's it. That's the start and end of it, to be honest. But no, it's good. It is fun. It's good to do it with, the 3 of us have known each other forever, so it makes it a bit easier. And it's just, we just finished our 50th episode. So, once you get to that stage, you feel like you should know what you're doing. But there's some weeks where I just go, why do people listen to what we've got to say? This is ridiculous.
I'm finding out with this as well. So hopefully hopefully we can keep going with it. But yeah. So for those who don't know, this is like I said, 2/3 of the Almost Blues Brothers podcast. Basically, if you want to listen to three blokes talk about Carlton for 50 minutes every week, they're you guys. They're the people you want to go to. So all podcast platforms, Spotify, the whole 9 yards. Am I correct in saying?
Appreciate it, mate. That's good.
Yeah.
And how's this been going? I've listened to a couple episodes. It's quality, mate. I like the opinions you bring it to the table. I mean, we'll get into it a bit. Obviously, Jules is probably going to be able to. This is probably where you're actually going to contribute more to a podcast for once, Jules, than what I do, which is nice. But how have you found it so far, Ari?
Oh, I love it. No, I think it's perfect platform to talk shit about the round ball, which I love doing more than anything else. So there we go. I found the medium in which I thrive. Good. I think.
Good.
Yeah. All right. Now going into the meat of what we're going to be talking about today. Obviously, for those who don't know, I am joined by two Italians. Is that am I correct in saying that?
Yeah, you are, mate. And obviously with recent things going on, it's not looking too good, Italian football at the moment in terms of on an international stage. And I think that's where you're headed.
I am exactly heading in that direction. Now, please, the floors is either of you. Please explain what was the emotion after that match and after your untimely exit.
I would say it's very disappointing. Obviously, being involved in football, in terms of the round ball, my whole life, and obviously being Italian, my parents, my dad being born there, my mum coming over. So it's very disappointing. But obviously, it was dying minutes as well. It was a freakish goal. All motions aside, we should have done it in the group stage. So. We shouldn't have had to go to the playoffs. We're such a big football country, but particularly, over maybe the last decade or so, in terms of elite talent, I don't think we're up there with the rest of the bigger countries as well. So in terms of the Euros, we've probably done extraordinarily well with the talent that we do actually possess it at the moment.
But this is, you just said it, right? So this is where my head went with it. The disappointment of the 95th minute. You can say whatever you want, right? Jules nailed it. We should have got it done in the group stage. I don't know how you go from 39 games or whatever it was, unbeaten streak, winning the Euros, to then bookending that in 2018 and 2022 with missing World Cups. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. I struggle to think of maybe Greece. Sorry, Ari, but I struggle to think of a time where that has happened other than when Greece maybe won it in 2004. And it just baffles me. It baffles me for a football nation, for a nation that's so proud. I'm with Jules. I don't understand how they don't get it done in the group stage, coming off what they came off. Like, the personnel didn't really change. Same coach, same coaching staff. It's just disappointing. It's super disappointing.
Yeah. Okay.
I still think in terms of the Euros, we did succeed expectations to a certain degree as well. But in saying that, we still should have qualified for the World Cup. I think that talent-wise, we do have enough. Compared to, in terms of the group as well, it wasn't a difficult group as such. We still should have qualified.
What do you reckon was the main issue? Maybe not issue, but what was the perhaps reason why it fell the way it did and it occurred the way it did?
Well, I think Jules sort of hit it on the head, right? Like, we did exceed expectations in the Euros. I don't think anyone really picked us to win it, even though we had that unbeaten streak prior. Nothing was super impressive about it. We just, Italy, they rode this wave of momentum throughout the Euros and got it done. But to Jules' point, they just don't have the cattle. Right? Like, Ciro Immobile, he's fallen off a cliff. He does nothing. Like, he offers nothing. He's a poacher. That's all he's ever really been, to be fair. When you need a bit of flair up forward, when you need someone to create, he's not the guy. And I don't think they've got anyone that can create. I simply don't. I think in the Euros, we saw, moments of brilliance from, someone like Insigne every now and then. But when it comes to do or die football, You need that creative spark up forward. And unfortunately, Italian football, they haven't really had it for a long time. You talk about Del Piero and whatnot. They're probably the last, Francesco Totti, they're probably the last of that dying breed for Italian football that actually did something in the attacking third. Since then, it's felt like they've gone back to the days of defending and winning games or staying competitive enough to win games or take points from nations just by being a defensive juggernaut. Doesn't work. When you got a team like North Macedonia, like honestly, that just wanted it more, it fell apart.
Yeah. And you go and look at in terms of even teams now, like you have a look at the Milan team, the Inter Milan team, you have a look at the Juventus team. There's from the Italian national team, there's not many players that are playing for those teams, and they're the big clubs. So, you have a look at England as well. There's a few English players now trying to step up into the bigger teams as well, and they're doing, pretty well on the international stage. But you have a look at the Italian league, and it's not so much. Another thing as well to put into perspective too, you have a look at a lot of international teams, and they are playing abroad as well. So they're understanding a different style of football. Predominantly the Italian team, they just play in Serie A. So that's another aspect of it to look into as well, which is interesting.
Yeah, and I kind of expected when the playoffs obviously were announced, I expected a Portugal-Italy final of the playoffs. And I kind of thought Italy were a team where you couldn't upset them in a way. I thought they were able to get up for big games like they did in the Euros final. It was a shock to me, especially like the golfing qualities. So like it's not even comparable between the two sides, and it was a major shock that it was a game. Like I feel like over a group thing, maybe if you could call it that, over a group stage, where there's multiple games and there's multiple variables, upsets can happen in that if like you're tired or you've been burnt out or whatever. Whereas in one game, in a one-off game, I thought Italy would have enough. But I mean, it was only under a year ago where they won the Euros, and for that to happen not even 6 months later is pretty disappointing.
Yeah, but just goes to show, like particularly in sport in general, it's all about moments. So, if in terms of like a long season, you have a bit more error can be made, but you go into a one-off match and one error leads to a goal, and then that's it. It's game over, and you're out of the, you can't qualify for the World Cup. So, it was all on the line, and we weren't able to get over the hurdle.
Jules, I've got to ask you a question because I haven't spoken to you about this. And for anyone listening or tuning in that doesn't listen to us, they wouldn't know this, but you're in Spain at the moment. You've been living in Spain for the last 9 months. So you're in Europe. I know you're not in Italy, but you're in Europe at the time when all this happens, right? Did you see much of it? Did you hear? Was it really exaggerated over there versus what we got here, or was it just?
Not necessarily, to be honest with you. I was actually watching Spain versus Iceland. So it was during that period. I was actually at a friendly. So I was able to get to that game, and I was watching, obviously keeping an eye on tabs on what was happening and whatnot. But obviously because we're in Spain, majority of it was around, their friendlies that they did have. So I didn't really hear much about it in terms of talking socially with people. But obviously, people that I do know, obviously they do know I'm Italian. So my friends around here and around, obviously they'll give me a little bit of heat. But in terms of the media, no, I wouldn't say it was as big of a thing. I think in Italy it would have been. Yeah. Another thing too is in terms of perspective as well. I don't really watch much news here as well, to be honest with you. I don't really, yeah. So, but in terms of football, it's all La Liga and Spain predominantly.
There you go. And we will touch on I want to ask about your time in Spain in terms of football a little bit later on. But I want to speak on Italy just a little bit more, and let's go back to the Euros. Let's not. I won't wallow in your despair much longer. Talk me through maybe the final and the semi-final and the latter stages of that tournament?
Yeah, so in terms of like my perspective on things, obviously I was living in Spain. I was during that time, so I was here. I came over probably 2 weeks into the tournament. So basically, it would have been, when the group stage did actually finish, and it was into the final stages. So I was able to come here and watch it, the Spain-Italy game at a bar, and man, I enjoy it. To be honest with you, the whole just me, myself, and I surrounded by, probably hundreds of Spanish people, and I got into them after the final whistle. And to be honest with you, there was actually when I did venture out, there was actually a lot of Italians here as well. Just the bar I was particularly at, I was surrounded by Spanish people, but that was a great experience too. And then I was in another bar at another part of Spain for the final against England. And that was a great experience too. But I have no doubt in Melbourne, particularly around the Carlton area, Joe, that would have been going off.
Well, I didn't venture down to Lygon Street. There was a big cohort of Italian Australians that ventured down for the morning of the final. But luckily I didn't, because apparently they couldn't get the stream going. So I think they only watched about 30 minutes of the match in the end. I watched both. I pretty much watched every game, bar the group stages, at my parents' house, who live around the corner from me. Went there early, 5 a.m. and whatnot, coffees and all that sort of stuff. And I was just going off my rocker, going off my absolute nut, especially that final. When it got to that penalty shootout, my heart was racing. I think everyone that was invested in it, they were just as nervous as it got. I don't know. Went down early. Luke Shaw puts it in, and we're going, no way. They just did it too easily early on, and I don't know, somehow clawed our way back, and it was good. It was good. It was, personally for me, it was a bit emotional. It was the first big football tournament that I've watched without my grandfather, who was Italian. He passed a few years ago, and yeah, I mean, it gives me goosebumps to think about now. That the whole time I was just thinking about how happy he would have been to see it, and yeah, it was good. It was a really good feeling just to see that happen. It took me back to 2006 when me and Jules, we were fortunate enough to go to the World Cup, and we came back and watched the final and whatnot. And after Australia got knocked out, and yeah, there's similar sort of emotions. So yeah, we're buzzing, but the last couple of weeks haven't been the same.
Clearly not. But the penalty shootout, I feel like I want to delve into the nerves around that, because I haven't, in my club team and both my international teams, Australia and Greece, haven't really been in a penalty shootout that intense, pretty much ever. What is because it's a European Championship final on the line in that shootout. Obviously, the week before, the game before in the semis, you got through in a shootout as well against Spain. What were the nerves like? Could you watch it? Was it like through fingers, or how'd you handle it?
It was almost through fingers. I made sure I forced myself to watch every bit of it and feel every bit of it. But it makes it a bit easier when you got Gianluigi Donnarumma in between those goals.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know about you, Jules, but I looked at him. I'm going, he's saving at least two. At least two he's saving, and it should get us over the line. When I saw that England put up Bukayo Saka and whatnot, and just some plays that were just not, I felt, experienced enough in the moment to take that opportunity, my nerves settled a little bit.
Yeah, I'm a pretty calm person, so I was able to watch it no problem. But going back into the nerve of the players, it's all from there. There's not much skill involved, to be honest with you. It's all in the mind games and the mental capacity of each individual players for both teams. So you sort of have to get into your own mind and just think about that particular moment and just convert. Really, it's it's one of those tricky ones. I've been a part of some penalty shootouts in the past as a player, and yeah, it's just in the moment you need to be able to be calm and composed and be able to convert. So it's an interesting one, but obviously we were fortunate enough to be on the right side of it in the end.
Yeah, I don't think I could handle it if any Chelsea, Greece or Australia got to a similar situation. I don't think I could watch it. I felt like I would completely crumble.
Well, I mean, outside of '06, which was also Italy as well, which I don't remember much of. Like, I remember it. I don't remember a lot of it. But I remember '05 with Australia, Uruguay. And that was like, I remember sitting there as like a 10, 11-year-old going like, and just being, it was kind of like the first time with sport, because Carlton have always been shit. It was the first time with sport for me that I was in like so invested in like wanting to, like you could see the light at the end of the tunnel. It was the same thing. It was the same thing with the Euros for me.
Yeah, I mean, I was obviously 04 with Greece. I was 3 weeks old or whatever it was, a couple of months old. And then the year after that, I was one for Australia, Uruguay. So I feel like maybe I was born and then just the downhill of both my national teams has just progressed. So I take full responsibility for Greece being shit at this stage. But I want to, obviously, Jules, you are in Spain at the moment and you have been, as you said, for the best part of nearly a year. Talk me through like football in Spain. Like, how is it different to football here?
It's the difference is you can't compare it. They eat, drink it. They're just invested in it. To be honest with you, it's on another level. I'm fortunate enough to live in Valencia. So I've been living here for the past 9 months. I have been traveling quite a bit, to be honest with you, during that period. But I've been lucky enough to get to almost 10 games, I would say, over the course of the season. And, you know, I've been able to see some, you know, like Real Madrid and Atletico Madrid and whatnot. So the atmospheres are electric. Even pre-game, I was fortunate enough to head to the Copa del Rey, the semi, and mate, the pre-game outside the actual stadium, never seen anything like it. Think about like the bar when is what you would see on YouTube, and like in terms of the bus coming down with tens of thousands of people surrounding it, flares, firecrackers, chanting from, you know, and I'm not saying like, you know, an hour or so before the actual bus was there with flares, firecrackers, chanting. I'm talking a good 3-4 hours before. It's you know, you can't compare it. Even after the game as well, the noise around the stadium was electric. You had the players, the actual stadium itself, Mestalla, you enter, okay, and then once you get to like the second and third level, when you're actually, you know, in the corridors of the actual stadium, you're sort of outside as well. If that makes sense? All right. So the players at the end of the game were standing there, and mate, there was tens of thousands of people. Same again, flares, chanting. The atmosphere is electric. You can't really compare it. Even around, I've been fortunate enough to go to obviously a few bars and stuff like that as well, even for games. Even there, they're electric. Throughout the course of the game, they're chanting, screaming, drinking, you name it. Yeah, it's whole nother level. Even last week, I was able to head to, not last week, sorry, the week before, I was able to head to Spain versus Iceland as well. I mean, in A Coruña, and even there at the game, it was only a friendly, mind you, and they were playing against Iceland. The stadium was packed pre-game. You know, the atmosphere around the bars was electric, and then obviously headed into the stadium. Like, I almost missed the kickoff. Like, there was that many people, you know, trying to head in. It was, yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah, and I hear a lot of people say, especially from Europe, it's almost as if it's a surrogate religion. If that's how people describe it. Would you agree with that sentiment?
Oh, mate, without a doubt. You have even a lot of foreigners here as well. So obviously, I'm teaching English at the moment in an English academy, and I've got, you know, Scottish, Irish, English people, and even them, you know, them talking about their culture that they have there, and you know, they sort of do it here. You know, they go to an Irish pub and they head down and watch, you know, their Chelsea or, you know, Arsenal or United. You know, it's just a different breed, different kettle of fish compared to what it is in Australia. You know, even in terms of AFL, obviously probably being the, you know, undoubtedly the number one sport in Australia, in terms of on a supporter base, it's incomparable as well. When you have something that's been going on, in terms of history for hundreds and hundreds of years, it's embedded in the culture. So without a doubt, that's the way. Another thing too is to keep in mind as well, when you've got that as well, you have it's like as if the team is a reflection of them as well. It's like, like I said, it's embedded in them. So when they support their team, like I was having a drinks just last night with my girlfriend and a few of her friends, and I was making a joke, like I go for the Levante, and mate, as soon as I said that, they were not aggressive, but obviously they were a bit upset that I did, support them, and obviously they're the risers of Valencia. So I was just making a joke of it because I knew how they would react. But that's still a certain point where, like, so it's a fine line, I would say.
Yeah, I feel like it's a lot more ultra type, like the fan base are a lot more like ultras than I've, especially here. I mean, here it's growing, especially with the active areas. I mean, there was the Melbourne Derby a couple of nights ago, and the active support were pretty good, especially from Melbourne Victory perspective. But what was probably the best game you've been to, like in terms of quality, atmosphere, and the whole nine yards?
Yeah, the best game I've been to, I was at the Mestalla, Valencia versus Atletico Madrid, where we came back down from a couple of goals. And I'm not talking like, in the second half, I'm talking like the last 10 minutes of the game sort of thing. So, and the injury time was, I think it went to like 6 or 7 minutes, something like this. It was like Fergie time, to be honest with you. So just electric. The atmosphere, unbelievable. That was when crowds were up as well in terms of capacity as well, because particularly early on in the season, the capacity was, I think it was at 25%, and then it went up to 50 more or less, and then 75, and then it went back up to 100%. So at that stage it was at full capacity, and mate, the atmosphere was electric. But in terms of pre-game, I can't, like in terms of football experience overall, I can't go past the pre-game at the Mestalla for the Copa del Rey semi-final. And I'm actually headed to Sevilla for the final. I haven't been able to jag any tickets yet, but I've booked hotel accommodation and everything like that. So fingers crossed I'm able to jag some tickets for that game, for the final against Real Betis on the 23rd. And hopefully the atmosphere will better the semi-final.
No, yeah, that's the aim. And I mean, I'll throw this to Joe because he hasn't spoken for about 50 minutes. But
Dave, you don't need to. Hey, like I said, this is one of the only podcasts where Jules is going to out-talk me. So keep going with him. I don't care.
No, so I want to. What's your football like experience or consumption in Australia?
Jules is going to.
What experience?
Jules have a good laugh about the experience side of it. Eh?
Yeah.
No, I mean, I grew up playing it. I played it for about 4 or 5 years, from when I was probably about 10 or 11 to about the age of 15, 16, played throughout like at school as well. But then sort of gave it up, focused on my studies, whereas Jules has obviously been a lot more involved with soccer over a long period of time. But yeah, I mean, I still watch it. Like Jules, I'm an Arsenal supporter. I watch Arsenal every weekend. It's been a terrible couple of weeks. Compound the Carlton Gold Coast loss with a loss to Brighton at home, and I was just filthy this weekend, genuinely filthy. No, mate, and so I mean that I'm pretty big into the EPL. A-League have sort of dropped off, unfortunately, and I'll just be honest, I don't. It's hard to watch at the moment. It's very hard to watch. I tried to watch a game a couple of weeks ago. Sort of thought, I'll flick it on and see if the quality's picked up, and hasn't. It's just it's very, very, very hard to watch. It's a lot of long balls to no one. You watch an EPL game and there's control, and they control it from the back half, and they try to get it forward from there and play through the opposition and whatnot. There's none of that in the A-League at the moment, and it's very, very disappointing. And it's probably a bit of a reflection on the Australian national team too. So, that's sort of my football story. I'm a burgeoning Tuesday night futsal player down at Altona Westgate Indoor Sports, 5-time champs down there. So still going strong. And I think when Jules gets back, we'll have another recruit, which will be nice. And that's the extent for me.
Yeah, I've got a futsal game at 10 o'clock, so I'm filling in for my brother's team. So hopefully we can get the W tonight. So I'm at Veneto Club in
Jules will tell you, I was handy when I was a handy football player. I wasn't anything special. There was no flash about me. I was just handy.
You're like a Harry Maguire.
Oh, he's the opposite of handy. He's fucking shit. He's got a lot about him. It's just all bad. There's just nothing good. There's a difference. I would like to.
I'll leave it. I'll leave it on that one. Thanks, Jules.
I'd like to self-christen myself as one of the best futsal goalkeepers in the state. I will go far as to say so. Just slightly on there.
If I ever need to fill in, I'm going to hit you up now.
Yeah,
that's
there you go. There you go.
There's not too many players that put their hands up for the keeping position, to be honest.
I love it. So, I love it. I find it more enjoyable than playing actual futsal. But
there you go.
It's just me, I guess. I think it's been alluded to that Jules has been basically a better footballer than Joe throughout his life, and a little birdie has told me that you played at a relatively high level, Jules. So do you want to tell us about that and who'd you play for and that whole experience?
So I've been fortunate enough to up until last year to play at senior level for, I don't know, it's been around 13 years, to be honest with you. I started quite young at the senior level. I was 16. I was fortunate enough to go to Whittlesea Zebras at the time, now Moreland Zebras, in the old VPL.
Who was your coach, Jules?
I was at the start of the season. I had Ivan Jelic. He's been an assistant coach for a few A-League clubs. At the moment, he's at MacArthur as an assistant, from what I'm aware of. But he was at Central Coast and Melbourne City. It might have been Melbourne Heart, but I think it was Melbourne City. Just not too sure in terms of the time frame there. But then after that, I was coached by Ange Postecoglou for the remainder of the season. Yeah, so being fortunate enough to be coached, by him. So he's actually not doing too bad at the moment.
Yeah, he's doing just Scotland, a little bit.
Just a little bit. So obviously they're unbeaten at the moment. Going, I think they're I don't know, and they're going. Obviously they've won the Old Firm Derby only a week or so ago. After that, I went to Clifton Hill in State 1 for a year, again under Ivan Jelic. I had a bit of a good connection with him. And then after that, I was fortunate enough to be, during that season and throughout the summer, I was at the youth team, Melbourne Victory, over the course of that summer, and then stayed on with them with the VTC to go into the VPL season. And I stayed with them until the halfway point, and then I went to Melbourne Knights. And then after that, I went to Werribee and actually stayed there for a number of years. I helped them. At least I think I helped them in terms of getting promoted. Joe might be able to speak. I don't really want to, talk too much about myself.
I like to when I look at Jules' Werribee career, it was probably the peak. It was genuinely the peak of his career. He still had his pace. It was before all the soft tissue injuries, which I'm sure we'll talk about in a minute. He still had his pace. Classy striker, classy Ari, very, very good in and around the goals.
Elegant, yeah.
And mate, when he says he helped him, he genuinely did. I mean, we're both from Werribee. We're both Werribee boys. Werribee were the terrible team for a number of years. Just couldn't get out of. I think they were State League 2, weren't they, Jules, for so many years?
Yeah. When I got to the club, they were promoted to State 1. So just because back then it was VPL and then State 1. So from there, helped them get promoted in, I think it was the second year. During that period of time too, I was starting to have a few injuries, but I was sort of playing through them. I had osteitis pubis. And then we got promoted to the NPL. And I stayed there for a number of years. And then after that, I went to North Geelong, and obviously started going a little bit down, in terms of time actually being spent playing. But now instead of being a striker, I was or winger. Now I spend a lot of my time as a defensive midfielder. So
it didn't help, Jules. Just quickly, it didn't help with your injuries that you were playing on a cow paddock every week out at Alco Park.
Yeah,
when I say this place was a genuine mud pit on a 30-degree day, it was a mud pit on a 30-degree day. I don't know what the drainage was like at Alco Park, but my God, I don't know how anyone played football from that.
That's where the best players prove their worth, on the shit grounds. It's the Sunday League. That's how it's.
I hope I did. So yeah, and I spent I think it was 4 or 5 seasons there. And in terms of a close knit group of guys, it was probably my favourite period of time. We had a coach James Coots, who was extraordinary. Now they're led by Stuart Beggsy, and throughout this, I think I've been keeping close tabs. I think they're 2-1 at the start of the season, so they're going pretty well at the moment too. I played under some electric atmospheres. Geelong Soccer Club got promoted, and when I kid you not, there was 2,000 people rocking up to games and whatnot when there was the derbies. So some of the atmospheres that we did have, even against some Croatian clubs and stuff like that. St Albans, the same again, 2,000, and even the ultras that we do have at North Geelong, the North fans. When I say bring in an atmosphere, boy, do they.
Joe, are you insinuating something there? Or?
Yeah, they are crazy, mate. No, Jules, what was your favourite year at North?
Possibly when you weren't there. Joe, just keep it in. Joe's a bit of an analyst, so I got him down when he wanted to get involved, because I knew obviously he had that was his forte. So and our coach James Coots was, in terms of being a coach, he was up to date with a lot of things. So Joe used to come down and do a lot of that kind of stuff in terms of video footage and data analytics for the club.
I took it seriously. There was no bullshit. I took it that seriously. I went and bought myself a pair of white boots and I wore them at training. I think I was the first ever analyst to wear boots at training.
Wow. Taking it professional. I like it. You go full.
Yeah, but mate, you have to get the coppers. That's coppers. That's what you have to go.
Copper Monday hours. Oh, mate.
That's what you have to go and get.
I got this.
You went all out.
Yeah, I went and got the white boots. Sorry, just thought I was probably a little bit more important than what I actually was, mate.
There you go. I heard Ange Postecoglou's name mentioned. Just tell me, what was that like being coached under him? Could you see this, what he's become? Could you see this? Was it instilled with him when he was a young up-and-coming manager?
Yeah, well, obviously previous to that, he coached South Melbourne, and then the Joeys, and then sort of, came involved in terms of Bulldogs Zebras. But then he obviously went on to coach Brisbane to, in terms of their era that they did have and the football that they did play. And, I could see it from the start, to be honest with you, just in terms of his man management and his analysis of the game. But most importantly, to be able to motivate and get the best out of the players. He's able to do that. I feel like as if he has in terms of his player management, he's able to get the best out of players. But not only that, he's able to get the buy-in from the players too. I think that's a key aspect of him. And obviously it was interesting in terms of the fallout that he did have with the Socceroos. There was a lot of things in and around that, which was interesting. But now he's been able to go on to bigger, better things. And, the Socceroos are sort of struggling at the moment, to be honest with you. I don't think in terms of on a global scale, we haven't been the same since the golden era. But in terms of on a football and being able to make sure that we've been able to get the results that we do need, I don't think we've been the same since Ange, to be fair.
Yeah. I think he was he was probably one of the best footballing exports from this country to Europe, both player and manager. I think he's like both players and managers included. I think is exceptional, and I do think he'll manage a top Premier League team or a top European team at some stage.
I've heard. I know he's been able to do it in Japan, obviously. Now in Scotland, if he goes close to undefeated this season, I'm not saying this season. I hope that he does stay at Celtic for a little while. But I've heard rumours that there are top four clubs talking in the EPL.
Yeah,
I've heard a similar rumor about one club in particular that might be losing their manager in a couple of seasons' time, if not at the end of the next season. I think we're talking about the same club, Jules.
Yeah. So it's a very big club. So I'm not saying that it's going to happen, but obviously the talk that it's there. And to be honest with you, mate, in terms of players, you've had players from Australia being able to play for, not in terms of big clubs, obviously Kuhl at Liverpool and whatnot, Duke at Leeds during that period too, to a certain extent. But managers, very difficult. But if Ange's able to do it, I think it'll open up quite a few doors, to be honest with you, for a lot of Australians.
Yeah, 100%. And on a personal level, it's good to see a Greek Australian take that step. So I've always had an affiliation towards him. But whenever, obviously he was at Raw and then he went to Victory and then the Socceroos, I thought that natural progression into Japan and then Europe, I just see his career skyrocketing. And he's still relatively young. He's got some years on his side. He's got some learning to do still. There's no reason why he can't be one of the top managers in Europe in maybe half a decade's time or perhaps even sooner. So it's going to be very interesting to see where his career goes from here.
Yeah. I honestly think he'll get the opportunity. I don't know how well he'll go. Obviously, we'll see. Time will tell. But he'll get the opportunity. No doubt.
Yeah, but he's also got to pick the right job as well, because he needs to be smart in where he goes and when he goes.
Yeah, I think he sort of needs. In saying that too, you go to a club like Celtic, they're big in their own right in terms of their history. And I think he even said it. I've actually watched quite a few interviews from post game, even obviously before when he did sign for Celtic as coach. You sort of look with those kind of clubs, you sort of do have to hit the ground running.
Yeah.
But I think his views on how the game needs to be played and whatnot, and in terms of the focus on where the club wants to be headed, the committee and the board of the club, they need to be aligned with his views and not stagnate or differ. So I think that's the main thing that needs to happen and what he needs to take into consideration. But I'm sure he's a smart person, so I have no doubt that he'll make the right decision.
Yeah, hopefully for his sake and for football in Australia's sake that he does, because I'm going to throw to you, Joe. Obviously Australia football is in a hole at the minute. What does it need to do to fix itself? Where does it need to improve?
I've always been a big believer in you've got to invest in the game, right? You can, I don't know, and Jules, again, can probably talk to this more than me because he's been around it a lot longer. But even when I was a kid, the politics at even grassroots level is just ridiculous. It's not necessarily the hardest working players that'll get through or the most talented. It's the ones that have got, unfortunately, the right connections or the right people in place to take them to places that they want to get to. Not all the time, but it's there, and it's definitely there at a junior level. I know I felt it, but for me, when you even past grassroots, when you look at what can we do now to fix where we're at, we're going to sudden death again for a World Cup playoff in arguably a pretty easy group when you think about it. Probably should have got through along with Japan very, very easily without having to go to sudden death. For me, we haven't invested in the national team since, I'd say Postecoglou, but probably before that, getting Gus Hiddink on board and really taking the national team to a level that we'd never seen before. And it's plain and simple for me. Invest in the right coaching staff. Let them make the decisions. Pay good money to get someone across. This isn't a dig at Graham Arnold. He's done what he's done at domestic level, and I think he's obviously a great coach. I'm an armchair expert, right? He's a great coach, but the difference between domestic and international level, it's massive. Like the golf, but especially Australian domestic football to international football and looking at a World Cup, it's massive. And it's not just the ability to put together a game plan that's going to sustain against some of the best, nations in the world. It's about being able to pick the right players and getting them to play the right roles and executing, for these big games. And Graham Arnold just hasn't been able to do it. That's fact. If he was able to do it, we wouldn't be in the position that we're in, and Australian football wouldn't be in the position that we're in. I don't blame Graham Arnold at the same time. I blame the FFA and the decisions they've made over the years to not invest in the game. My grandfather, who was the one I spoke about before, he was always a big believer in just pay big money to whoever you need to pay big money to, get them across, and get people invested back in the game. So whether it be, I know this, it seems far-fetched now, but at the time when he was available, someone like a Mancini, who was out of business, out of a coaching job after Man City, and wanted the international experience, and we go after, I think it was Pim Verbeek at that stage, was it not? And it's like, what are we doing? Like, for an extra couple of mil, probably could have been. And I know I'm not talking about a couple of mil either as just chump change, but if you want to grow the game, if you want to invest in the game, you've got to spend the money at the end of the day. We're coming up against nations that this is, like Jules said before when he was talking about how it is in Spain, it's their religion, right? If you want this game to grow, you've got to invest in it monetary wise. And we just don't do it. We don't do it at the top level. We don't do it in the top flight. And it's a shame because there are some pretty talented footballers that come out of this country. We're a small country and it's not our number one sport by any means. It could be, but we just don't invest in it correctly. We don't invest in it enough, and it's a shame. Hopefully one day that changes. Hopefully, like you guys were talking about with Ange, right? If something like that happens and it changes the perspective on Australian football, maybe the FFA wakes up a bit and goes, all right, now's the time to pull the trigger and invest and really take that next step. But until they're ready to invest, we're going nowhere, and we're going nowhere fast. And you can see it in the A-League and the quality that's coming out of the A-League. It's probably as bad as it's ever got, to be fair.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting.
Yeah, Jules, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's interesting in terms of, obviously since the golden era, in terms of the quality of players that we were able to actually produce. You have a look at the golden era, and a lot of those kinds of players came through the ranks of, ethnic clubs at the end of the day. In terms of those kinds of players, that in terms of that caliber, it's not happening. I feel like as if we need to sort of rethink our perspective on those kinds of clubs. I've been involved in, obviously, in terms of on a state level, in terms of playing with those kinds of clubs, and I can tell you those kinds of people, and obviously, they're from European, they're from a culture, a football culture, in terms of the way they think. And we need to tap into that, I feel. I'm not talking about in terms of the ultras and in terms of them being, in terms of bad sort of publicity on those kinds of people. Because for me, I enjoy the atmosphere that the ultras and things like that they do bring. Obviously, there's a certain line. I don't really want to go tap into that, but it's more about the passion that they have and the drive that they have for the sport to succeed. Another thing too, I want to talk about is just the difference in terms of options and opportunity. There's none in Australia. Like in terms of comparing it to other footballing countries, we've got 12 professional teams, so 12 coaches. Do you know what I mean? In terms of players, the rosters aren't as big as other countries, and on top of that, there's, like I said, there's only arguably 12 clubs, 200 plus professional players in a country. So there's the opportunity is very limited, and on top of that, you've got the physios, the sport conditioning, and so on, the analytics. So if you want to try and better the league, there needs to be a second division. There needs to be, and I've got another thing too is, like, particularly the bottom clubs in the A-League, like if they're shit, there's no repercussions. There's nothing. yeah, shit, it's all right. Like, and on top of that, the A-League helps them in terms of actually propping them up financially as well. So,
But the other
it's
thing,
interesting too. I think there's a lot that kind of thing needs to change, because if it doesn't, and there's no pressure involved to try and improve and try to get better, then and the opportunity, then a lot of the time, young players. I know there's a couple of players at North Geelong that have gone overseas as well recently. Lucas Goko, he's signed a Prussian club, and Nicola as well, Vladovic, I think that's how you pronounce his name. They've gone on and they've signed as well in Croatia. So, and they're actually doing, I've seen a few highlights and whatnot, and they've been playing pretty regularly as well there. So, and they're doing well, and they've sort of bypassed the A-League, So if they weren't able to get involved there, it's interesting.
The other thing with growing the game, right, and I spoke about it before, and investing in coaches at the national level and whatnot, but if I think back to 5-6 years ago, you have the likes of like a Del Piero coming here for a couple of years, and you've got obviously Diamanti now at West United and whatnot. But those bigger names like Del Piero and Harry Kewell when he came to Melbourne City, Melbourne Victory, for those. Like, at the end of the day, if you're not competitive with other nations' domestic leagues from a monetary perspective as well, you're going to lose it. You're going to lose audience interest. Like, how many times have we heard about a player choosing the MLS over the A-League just because they could get paid more at the end? Like, do you know what I mean? And it's little things like that I think get overlooked in Australian football that really hurt it long term. I remember coming out of that golden era when the A-League was really starting up, and they started investing in the A-League, and those marquee salaries opened up, and we're able to get those players across. The casual fan turned into a fan that went every week, and I was one of them. I went to Melbourne Victory games almost every other week in what was the season when Frank Lowy fell off the stage and we won the title? Yeah, that I promise you, I rarely missed a weekend that year, and it was due to the fact that you were going there and you were watching quality football and quality players. Well, for me, the interest levels dropped off because there's no the lack of quality. I'm not going to say there's no quality players, there are, but the lack of quality out there and the lack of quality football that you see at that level is, it's hard to watch. It's just hard to watch.
Yeah, I fully agree with everything you two have said, and it's a shame considering where we were. It's like because we've gone on this massive decline. I think that's the worst part. Is like we had it, we had the formula, we had the players, we had everything there, and we've just kind of, whether it's through lack of development, lack of investment, people not caring, it's the downward spiral that football in this country has gone through, which I've been very vocal about on this podcast, is the most disappointing thing, and it's very frustrating.
Like Jules said, there's plenty of quality players out there that are playing at grassroots level, senior level in state leagues and the NPL, that if we got it right from an admin perspective, I think it could turn around very, very quickly. But the FFA have got to do something. They've got to do something quickly, because the drop-off that we've seen, it's only going to keep continuing to a point where it's going to be almost unsalvageable at some point. If you've got a wave of momentum of kids wanting to play football in Australia, and it's becoming one of the biggest sports at grassroots level, especially, if not the biggest at this point, why would you not want to invest and overinvest to secure a long-term and sustainable future for the game? It blows my mind.
I think that's a perfect note to end it. Thank you two very much for joining me on this episode of the Two Footed Tackle podcast. Of course, if you do want to listen to some blokes talk about Carlton for an hour every week, or Almost Blues Brothers on all good podcasting platforms, and then obviously Instagram, Almost Blues Brothers on that as well. So yeah, thank you very much for joining me, and hopefully we'll chat soon.
Pleasure, mate, and we'll have you on.
Cheers.
We'll have you on ours at some point too.
There we go. That's it. All right. Thanks, lads. And welcome back to Just Me. I hope you all enjoyed what Jules and Joe had to say. Of course, there was no Dan, unfortunately. But yeah, check them out on all their socials and all their podcast platforms. At Almost Blues Brothers. They are seriously good at what they do. They're a good group of lads, and they are, like I said, very good at what they do. So let's go on to who went into Footed. And I think I mentioned it briefly when I spoke about United, but it's Ronaldo and that situation. And I'm going to keep this brief, but that kid is overreacting. I'm sorry, but we get it. Cristiano Ronaldo slapped your phone out of your hands. Oh, my hand's bruised. No one cares. Get over yourself. You shoved the phone in his face after he's clearly angry and you expect him not to do anything. He's human. Like, relax. Like, come on. Oh, my hand's bruised. I don't care. No one cares. Oh, my phone's broken. No one cares. Like, should he get a new phone? Probably. Like, for free? Yeah, probably. Should Ronaldo have invited him to training and say sorry to him and all this shit? Maybe sorry, but invite to training? No. Just send a tweet. Or send a fucking letter. Like, relax, man. Like, oh, my hand hurts. No one cares. No one cares. Sorry, but like, who went into footy this week is that fan that overreacted, that Evertonian fan. I assume he's from Everton, so yeah, fuck him. Time to preview the week. We're gonna do this swiftly because here's a peek behind the scenes. It says 26 minutes on my recording, but realistically that's about 23 because I took a break, right? And I left the recording open. About 23 minutes. I don't know how long we recorded with Jules and Joe. So this could be an hour-long episode by now. I genuinely don't know. So I'm just going to keep this really brief, the preview of the week. Obviously, we have the Champions League games midweek. Victory's playing tomorrow, great. Bayern Munich versus Villarreal. I'm going to go with Villarreal 1-1. They're going to beat Bayern Munich on aggregate. Can I just say that last week I did predict Villarreal will get a result, and they did. Real Madrid versus Chelsea. I think Chelsea will win 2-0 and will go through on penalties. I hope that happens. Atletico Madrid versus City. I think City will win 1-0 away from home and go through. Liverpool versus Benfica. 2-0 Liverpool. And they'll go through. Atalanta versus Leipzig. Leipzig 2-0. They'll go through 3-1 on aggregate. Bayern Munich versus Barcelona versus Frankfurt. Barcelona 1-0. They'll go through 2-1. Why am I saying Bayern Munich instinctively? Lyon versus West Ham. 1-0 on aggregate. I think West Ham will win 2-0. Rangers versus Braga. So West Ham will go through 3-1 on aggregate. Rangers versus Braga. I think Rangers win 2-0 and go through 2-1 on aggregate. Tottenham versus Brighton, yeah, not bad game. Any other Prem games that are pretty good? Not really. FA Cup semi-final, Liverpool versus City. I think Liverpool will win that. FA Cup semi-final, Chelsea versus Palace. I think Chelsea will win. So it's going to be Chelsea-Liverpool FA Cup final. Hopefully Chelsea can get revenge over them for the League Cup final. And there we're done. All right. I don't know how long this podcast has gone on for, so that's why I kept that really, really, really brief. But thank you all very much for watching. I appreciate you, as always. All the love and support. Very much appreciated. Any engagement on any platform, very much appreciated. So yeah, stay well, stay safe, enjoy yourselves. Goodbye. See you next week. Goodbye.